what is the difference between div and span? So we're going to find out. Actually, there's surprisingly little difference, and it depends on how you want to use it. So normally, let's see how we would do that. So we could make this into a div. So there's my div tag, and I can go right to the end of it, and I can close the div tag with /div. Oh, it's closed automatically. Div like that. So I can save that, and I can refresh the page here, and it looks strangely the same. But let's split this into two parts. This guy uses very long sentences. So what we'll do here is put a closing div tag in there and an opening div tag in there. So what I've done is I've made this section is one div and this section is the other div. So let's save that, and we'll refresh the page to see what we get. So what we notice now that it has split it into two blocks. There's the first div and the second div, and there's a new line in between. And this is because we regard div as a block level element. So any new div will always start on a new line. So let's try span. I'm going to put it in here. I'm going to do a span there. I'm so happy, my dear friend. And we'll do a closing span there. So I can save that, and if I refresh the page, we won't see any difference just yet. But I'm going to style that span so we can tell the difference. So we need style and close the style like that, and we'll put difference. So that selector is the difference, and the properties are going to be color, and we'll make it red. So span, go back to my span, then I'm going to give it the class of difference. I could have called it anything, but that's what I've called it. So span class equals difference. So now we will see something different when we refresh the page. So there we go. We can see the span there, and what we can see is that it's an inline element, as we call it. So it's not a block level element, it's inline, and it doesn't create a new line. But it doesn't have to be that way. This is the way that it's normally done, and I'd normally recommend that you do things in the way that they're normally done, because it does make sense to people. So span is for something within paragraphs, within lines, and div is for something of a larger nature that you want to have separate. But you could do this with the div. So I can do that with it and display in line. So I've just made my div not a block level element anymore. I've made it an inline element, and you can see that new line now has disappeared. And conversely, I can do a similar thing with span, and I make that display block. Save it and refresh the page, and we see that span now has become an element in itself, a block in itself. So this is kind of like the flexibility of HTML, that you can do pretty much what you want with it, but it's normal to do normal things. So div will be the big blocks, and span is within the lines. So I'm just going to go back to where we were, because this is all very confusing, isn't it? We'll take that out. So we've just got that red colour. That's the only thing that is still applied to the span. Okay, so that's pretty much it, the difference between div and span. But it wouldn't hurt just to add one extra little thing, is that these blocks of text, they're bunched up against each other. So what we can do here is we can go div, and we can do margin bottom 1em. So whatever the browser has set the font size to be, because we haven't specified it ourselves, it will now set the margin at the bottom of the div to be equivalent to one line of text. So refresh that, and there we go. We've got our margin at the bottom, and there is a margin below this div here. It's just well, let's just put something else in. Div something else and close the div. So we'll save that, refresh, and we can see we've got that space in there. So that's it for now. Don't forget to like, subscribe, add a comment, ask a question, and I'll see you in the next video.